Hey guys, welcome back. This is going to be the last part in the series where I'm just kind of doing a speed run of how I'm laying out the scene. I've now kind of set everything up. I have the stuff roughly textured out. I have my pattern set up, rigged. That kind of model's all done. I have the animating beads moving as well. I have this easy way of doing the mesh to kind of make it look like obsidian kind of rock. So now the main thing is just setting up the camera and making sure it all kind of makes sense. So let's just first go over here and then add a new camera view. And let's make sure our camera is set. I like to render in 1920 by 1920 so I can get higher definition. And I'm going to do 30 frames a second, and then this seems reasonable. A 360 frame animation, cool. And then on the camera view itself, how do we want to make this? We should add in a depth of field node. Let's push Z here and let's go to rendered view. And then the focal length maybe is like 85, or it could be like really far away. I think 85 is probably fine. And then I'm gonna add the depth of field. Nice. I think we're getting somewhere with the composition. So let's just kind of unpack what happened right now. We just did a really simple geometry node floor to kind of get something happening. And then we just did some different rough rock shapes we did kind of in the previous tutorial, and then joined them all together, and then basically just instanced and rotated them all around. Just get some big shapes kind of in there. And then we have like two camera placements trying to show different spots of this kind of like dark sun thing. So now I'm more happy with it. I added a volumetric to make it way easier to see. The volumetric was done just with a quick kind of like shading thing where I really clamped the noise down so it's really like tight. And that way I have just a tiny bit of volumes in here. That's the best way I could think about like hiding all of the crap I didn't like. Okay, so now I'm gonna clone out, I think, the scene twice. So I can do 2 different shots with the cameras. I have a rough layout, but I also got a pose palpate pattern in 2 different positions. I'm probably gonna also do a little animation between the 2. So yeah, I'm gonna do that really quick. Welcome back from the time lapse. I finished up kind of what I wanted to do so far, and so now I have 3 scenes. So I have scene 1, scene 2, then a pattern close-up. And I'm kind of happy with how it all turned out. So let's just talk about everything on the scene so we can talk about how I kind of set it all up. There's obviously a lot of tinkering to kind of make it happen. Now that it's all done, let's break down all the elements in the scene to make sure we kind of understand what we have. So we have a base ground layer. We have the geonode system that we built before with the little spheres to get that sphere effect. We also have this kind of black sun thing and the sky texture. So let's just look at each of them really quick. So the cloud texture we were able to kind of change over time. So all these things kind of also moving over time as well, which is kind of nice. So we have this moving with a frame driver and a float curve to then shift between 2 different noise textures to kind of get that clouds looking like they're moving in between 2 different areas. I added in the fog and the clouds because I just hated how everything was textured and looking. It looked just too like CGE. It still does, to be completely honest. I'm not super happy with all the texturing, but at least it feels more kind of weird, and especially like the flat shading I did on the pattern design. That really contrasts nicely, I think. And then I did a similar thing with this ring texture, is I also just did a scene time on the rotation after I mapped it a bunch of times to get the spiraling of the texture of the vortex, which feels very spooky ooky, which is nice. And then what else did I do? I did a lot of actually parenting lights onto pattern to make sure he was lit correctly. So if you see this, let's go into this view. We can now see all of these lights I used to light the shader of this. So the shader was just a toon shader, really quite straightforward, right? You just took basically a normal map playing with it. So normal maps coming into a mix with the noise texture, putting into a Voronoi, and putting that into the diffuse mapping of that, then shader to RGB with just some clamps to get those kind of fall off areas. That basically makes the texturing of it feel a bit more kind of nuanced. So you kind of get that, again, no one's zooming in this close, but that's how you get this, as you see right here, this kind of like painter like strokes version inside the texturing. Awesome. Also, what I did is I made sure to change this depending on where I was doing it. So in this scene, I completely cut back almost all of the particles so it would render a lot faster by just adjusting the plane so that way it would adjust the scatter. And it was important to not change the scale so that way the design was still the same, because that way the ribbon effect of the spheres would move as you would expect. So see here, they're moving like that. And that's the same thing as you'd expect for the other scenes. But what's also nice too is since we have way less particles, I could pump up the subdivision surface on this one to make sure they're a bit more smooth, because this is kind of more of a glamour shot where we're going to be seeing them in the bottom of the render as we see like right here, right? So we want to make sure we have that tighter. Nice. So then in this other first scene, it was kind of more of a far away one. So then on this scene, what we were able to do is very similar, same thing. We have the same elements. We kind of repositioned the camera. Then I was able to do a little animation on the hand by going into the animation area, doing some NLA editing really quick. And what's nice is this one is a bit more zoomed out, so we had to have more particles, but also less subdivisions, so that way it looked a bit better. And I think the way this effect looked good was by basically hiding it all with fog. So that was kind of the hack I learned. And that was nice. And then the last scene we had right here was a bit of a different angle and also a different animation. So I just, had him go back and forth. So it feels like he's living inside the kind of Shadesmar, like bead dystopia world. This is kind of the main idea. This project file will be on my Patreon. Feel free to grab it and explore everything I did in here. A lot of things I could still do better. I could definitely clean up my collections and kind of make it a bit more straightforward, but I kind of just was moving as fast as possible to finish this quick and try to just knock it all out. I learned a lot doing this larger scene, and it was fun to kind of use a literary work that I've been kind of really into. It made it feel more exciting. Feel free to reach out and ask questions, and look forward to seeing you guys in the next one. Thanks so much for watching, guys. Peace out.
Augury.